aims of tonight's webinar really are to examine the evidence base for and against raw or barf feeding, barf being biologically appropriate raw food. I, as a scientist before I was a vet, like to examine the evidence on anything for and against before I make up my own mind on my opinion. So hopefully it'll be helpful for anyone out there that's confused or trying to kind of sort out what is fact versus fiction, what do they need to tell their clients, how do they give responsible and safe advice around different feeding practices, raw and otherwise. The second thing we want to do is give you that information as veterinary professionals, whether you're a vet nurse, vet, or kind of veterinary reception or customer care staff, to give you some information to educate and support your clients in their nutrition decisions. The third thing is to remain unbiased as I can. And I know and I hope that we have a lot of people from all kinds of opinions, and I want to do a good job of giving the for and against kind of facts around it and letting people make up their mind for themselves. I would say at this point bias goes both ways, because we can have people who are proponents of raw feeding putting their fingers in their ears a little bit and not listening to the evidence. So whatever side you're on, I think let's approach tonight's webinar with an open mind and with being open to facts and evidence, and maybe realizing that it's a gray area. It's not black or white when it comes to the pros and cons around this topic. And then, because we're obviously under severe time pressure, I say this almost in every webinar, I have a tendency to waffle on at length on topics that I'm quite passionate about. But we do have just an hour or just over with some question time afterwards. So I want to keep it short and sweet. But I've provided a massive list of references and further reading for you to go into later on if you so choose. So there's only so much we can talk about tonight in the time pressure we have. The last thing to say is about the conflict of interest that a lot of I've seen some people raise, and I know the webinar vet have had some questions about. This is going to be very biased because it's from someone who works for a commercial processed pet food company, Tails.com. I want to give, and my manager would want me to give Tails.com's point of view on raw feeding, and it's very much that we're not anti raw feeding, pro kind of commercial processed food. We support our customers' nutritional decisions for their dogs if they're right for them, and we always try to be educational around topics in canine nutrition and canine health. We have plenty of Tails.com customers who feed raw alongside their Tails.com blends. We have plenty of customers who, for some reason or another, their dog maybe have multiple allergies or intolerances, have found that a raw food suits their dog better than some of the blends that we've been able to create for them. And we're absolutely fine with that as long as it's done safely and responsibly in a balanced way. So I'm taking the Tails.com hat off. I'm very much here as Sean the vet, who is independent of my day job with Tails.com. And I'm hopeful that you'll trust me in that conflict of interest being eliminated in my approach to giving you the right information tonight. So we'll look at the current context in the UK specifically of raw feeding. We'll look at the evidence base and explore the question of, does it exist? Is it balanced on both sides? We talk about the European Society of Veterinary and Comparative Nutrition Congress that was in Munich a few weeks ago, and that they had a BARF, a biologically appropriate raw food day this year. We'll also talk about the frequent claim, and the kind of philosophy that arises from treating the dog as a wolf and aspiring to a kind of natural ancestral wolf diet when we're feeding domestic dogs, that actually kind of informs a lot of thinking around raw feeding. Then we'll talk about microbiological factors, which are obviously one of the main concerns that people would have around raw feeding, homemade raw diets in particular. We'll talk about nutritional factors, in particular imbalances and the effects that can have. And then we'll talk about the actual benefits and proven benefits of raw and barf feeding, and how to recommend raw feeding responsibly.